Page 112. I'm going to start reading at line 322. We're in the kingdom of subtle matter, and Aurobindo has been telling us that our lives are not cut off here in this material world from subtler planes. We are connected. It's as if our world is a spur connected to a much larger range of mountains. And from those other realms that we are connected to, so many things come to us. So now he's speaking about these higher worlds that have a finer substance, this subtle matter. And there's a different kind of nature there. A nature lifted by a larger breath, plastic and passive to the all-shaping fire, answers the flaming Godhead's casual touch, immune from our inertia of response. It hears the word to which our hearts are deaf, adopts the seeing of immortal eyes, and traveler on the roads of line and hue pursues the spirit of beauty to its home. Thus we draw near to the all-wonderful, following his rapture in things as sign and guide. Beauty is his footprint, showing us where he has passed. Love is his heartbeat's rhythm in mortal breasts. Happiness, the smile on his adorable face. A communion of spiritual entities, a genius of creative immanence, makes all creation deeply intimate. A fourth dimension of aesthetic sense, where all is in ourselves, ourselves in all, to the cosmic wideness realigns our souls. A kindling rapture joins the seer and seen. The craftsman and the craft, grown inly one, achieve perfection by the magic throb and passion of their close identity. All that we slowly piece from gathered parts, or by long labor stumblingly evolve, is there self-born by its eternal right. In us, too, the intuitive fire can burn. An agent light, it is coiled in our folded hearts. On the celestial levels is its home. Descending, it can bring those heavens here. but rarely burns the flame, nor burns for long. The joy it calls from those diviner heights brings brief, magnificent reminiscences and high, splendid glimpses of interpreting thought, but not the utter vision and delight. A veil is kept. Something is still held back, lest, captives of the beauty and the joy, our souls forget to the highest to aspire. You will begin, Suresh.
A nature lifted by a larger breath, plastic and passive with a all-shaping fire, answer the flame Godhead's casual touch, immune from our inertia of response. It hears the word to which our thoughts are deep, adopts the saying of immortal eyes, and traveler and the roads of line and hue, pursues the spirit of beauty to its home.
Yes. So in that kingdom of subtle matter, which is close to ours, and connects us to whole ranges of other subtle worlds, there is a nature which is lifted by a larger breath. It's the idea of prana. There's this life energy that's carried in our breath. There the breath is larger and wider and more powerful. And that nature is plastic. It doesn't mean that it's plastic like the cover of my book. It means plastic in the sense of being able to be shaped into different forms. Nowadays we shape it into chairs and other useful things. But the original meaning of the word is something that, some material that can be shaped, like clay. You can make plastics, you can make the models for sculpture out of clay. So that nature is plastic like that. It can be shaped easily, and it's passive. It accepts the touch of the all-shaping fire, the energy that creates forms. So that nature answers, it responds to even the casual touch, just a simple passing, small touch of that flaming Godhead, that all-shaping fire. That nature is immune from our inertia of response. Because our substance, the substance of our bodies, is matter. We are physical beings, and that substance is much denser than the subtle matter of that world. We suffer from inertia. It's difficult for our substance to respond to those casual touches or the subtle senses. But there, the nature is immune from that inertia of response that we suffer from. So it can hear the word, the creative word, the command, to which our hearts are deaf. Our hearts can't hear it. And that nature adopts the seeing, the power of vision, of immortal eyes. And it uses this power of response to explore beauty. It's a traveler on the roads of line and hue, color, lines and hues. It pursues the spirit of beauty to its home. It's always trying to find that spirit of beauty in all forms.
The all-shaping fire, this individual expansion.
I think this is the all-shaping fire, the cosmic energy that shapes all forms. There's the tradition about the elements, not the 5 elements. The element of...
Nothing to do with the expression.
No, not in this case. But this next sentence maybe has something to do with aspiration. Slava, would you read? Thus means in this way, thus.
Thus we draw near to the all wonderful, all his breakthrough in his design and white. Beauty is his supreme soul, as where he has
Past.
He has passed. What is his heartbeat written in mortal? Breast, happiness, and smile on his every face.
So even here we do somehow respond, or some people respond to the attraction of beauty, the spirit of beauty. It's a way for us to draw near to the all-wonderful, to the divine in his aspect of wondrous beauty. If we follow his rapture, his delight in things, in shapes and forms, no? As a sign and guide. We can do that because beauty is like his footprint. A hunter will follow the footprints of his prey, no? In a similar way, we can trace the steps of the all-wonderful because he leaves his mark of beauty everywhere, showing us where he has passed. When the last school building in Aurobindo was inaugurated in 1971, Mother gave the message that in the physical, the divine manifests as beauty. That's his physical way of expressing himself in form. Beauty is his footprint, showing us where he has passed. We can track him. And love, in us, our experience of love, it's like his heartbeat's rhythm in our mortal breasts. When we experience true happiness, that's like the smile on his adorable face, the adorable face of the all-wonderful. Do you like to read, sir?
communion of spiritual entities, a genius of creative immanence, makes all creation deeply intimate, a fourth dimension of aesthetic sense, where all is in ourselves in all. To the cosmic brightness realigns our souls.
Thank you. So we too can get connected to all this universal beauty through this communion, this communication between spiritual entities, spiritual beings. There's a spirit, a genius. Nowadays we use this word in a different way to mean somebody who's extremely gifted in some way or another. No? But a spirit of creative immanence. Immanence means indwelling. There's the immanent divine, the divine dwelling in all the forms and movements of his creation. So there's a spirit of creative immanence moving through everything, making all creation, everything in the creation and all acts of creation, deeply intimate, all connected. He speaks here of a fourth dimension. In our material world, we measure things in 3 dimensions. But Mother too has talked about this fourth dimension, which connects everything, so that we're in that fourth dimension, we're not separated by space and time. A fourth dimension of aesthetic sense, of being that's able to sense and respond to beauty, where all is in ourselves. We feel united with everything, and we feel that we are dwelling in everything. So that fourth dimension realigns our souls. It puts them in harmony with the cosmic wideness, the vastness of the whole universe. Here I think Sri Aurobindo is speaking about the creative process. There's times and moments when the creative genius in ourselves responds to beauty and feels inspired to recreate beauty, if possible, in many different ways, whether in music or in words or in forms of different kinds, or in expressions, dramatic expressions, for example.
Genius has got the rule like genetic genealogy.
It's actually a Latin word meaning spirit. So they speak about the genius loci. They felt that every space has a spirit looking after it. This use of the word to mean a very talented person is quite modern.
In Islamic thing, there's a jinns.
Though there's other jinns, so it's the same thing. They are spirits. They are subtle physical beings. Yeah. The genii, yes. Very closely connected to us. Yes, Jerome?
The communion of spiritual entities. Should I take that literally, or?
Sorry?
The communion of spiritual entities.
Yes.
What are there really, like, does it mean like separate entities outside of yourself?
Or within ourselves. Maybe all of us have our spiritual entities within us, no? And in these subtle ways, they can communicate in a more intimate way than we can with our words or our emails or all our different ways of trying to communicate. This is a much closer kind of communion. He says communion, doesn't he? Yeah. So that communion is going on all the time and making all creation deeply intimate. It is only us inside these bags of skin. We feel so much separated from ourselves and our environment, and we have to learn about our environment through the sense experiences. But on a deeper level, he's telling us we're all deeply connected. There's this one fourth dimension which is connecting us all. So that's how it comes about that we human beings can become creative. That's expressed in the next sentence, please, Mila.
Apparently, rapture joins the seer and saint, the craftsman and the craft grown inly one, achieve perfection by the magic flow and passion of their close identity.
Yes. A kindling rapture. Kindling means lighting a fire, so an energy, a delight which gives lots of energy, joins the one who sees and what he sees. And that close identity makes the craftsman or the artist inwardly one. He does his creation out of a feeling of oneness. That's how perfection in art and in craft can come about, through this passion, this intensity of the close identity between the one who sees and what is seen, identification. And obviously that is happening much more in this kingdom of subtle matter, where there's this nature that's lifted by a larger breath, no? Inwardly.
Like immanently.
I think we can say inwardly one. Amrita?
All that we slowly kiss from gathering mass, or while long labor stubbornly above, is there self-born by its eternal life. In us to the intuitive fire can burn, and agent light, it is called in our thoughts, call it Christ. On the celestial levels, it is called. Descending, it can bring without heaven's spirit.
Yes. So he's comparing that world and our world. Here, if we want to make something beautiful, we have to slowly piece it together from gathered parts. It may take us a long time to evolve that skill and that achievement. But there, in the world of subtle matter, it's self-born. It just appears by itself, by its own eternal right of existence and perfect form. But even here, in us too, that intuitive fire that brings the sense of oneness, it can burn. It's coiled up in our tightly folded hearts. It's a light which acts. It's an agent light. It brings about action. Its home is on the heavenly levels. That's where it belongs. But it can descend, it can come down and bring those heavens here to us. But it doesn't happen often, and it doesn't remain very long. Yes, Jerome?
What does he mean with coil in our folded hearts? Why is hearts not full?
Because he's thinking of the hearts of each of us, all of us. Each of us has a heart, and all of our human hearts tend to be folded up. They're not fully open. But nevertheless, that light of intuitive energy is coiled up inside them. In your heart and my heart and all the hearts.
I was thinking, does he mean, is it also the Atman, your soul, what he's talking about?
It's an agent light. It's an agent of the soul, yes. Jerome, you read.
But rarely burns the flame, nor burns for long. The joy it calls from those diviner heights brings brief, magnificent reminiscences and high-splendid glimpses of interpreting thought, but not the utter vision and delight.
That's in our case, no? We may get that wonderful creative urge, but it doesn't come very often. It doesn't last very long. It brings us an intense joy, perhaps the most intense joy we human beings can experience. It is that creativity, no? The joy it calls from those diviner heights brings to us brief, magnificent reminiscences, memories. We have come from there. We may get a wonderful memory of those higher worlds. And high, splendid glimpses of interpreting thought that can understand the forms of things. But it doesn't bring us the utter, complete vision and delight. Joanne.
Really scared something is still held back, lest captives of the beauty and the joy, our souls forget to the highest to aspire.
Yes. There's a reason why it can't last for long. We would just be satisfied, no? We'd be captives of the beauty and the joy, and we would forget that there are higher possibilities. So, in that world, something is still held back. So that our souls don't become captives of the beauty and the joy and forget to aspire even higher. Ganga Lakshmi.
In that fair subtle realm behind our body, the form is all, and physical gods are kings. The inspiring light lives in fine boundaries. The faultless beauty comes by nature's grace. Their liberty is a perfection guaranteed. Although the absolute image lacks the word, incarnate the sheer spiritual ecstasy. All is miracle of symmetric charm, the fantasy of perfect line and rule.
Yes. So he's repeating what he has told us before, how much more beautiful everything, all forms are in that world than what we can normally imagine or dream of. That fair, it means beautiful, in that beautiful, subtle realm which is behind our own, within and supporting our own. Form is all. It's the only thing that matters, beauty of form. And their physical gods are kings. They rule that world. There, this inspiring light from above plays in fine boundaries, within limits, very beautiful limits. And a faultless beauty, perfect beauty, comes just automatically like that, by the grace of nature. Their liberty is perfection's guarantee. If everything is just left to happen spontaneously, it happens perfectly. Everything is a miracle of symmetric charm, beautifully balanced, delightful, a fantasy of perfect line and rule. Everything just happens beautifully. Tomoko, would you read?
They all feel satisfied in themselves and whole. A rich completeness is by limit made. Marvel in an utter littleness abounds. An intricate rapture riots in a small space. Each region is kin to its environment. Each line is perfect and inevitable. Each object faultlessly built for charm and use.
So that's the world where form is all, perfect form. So all the beings and all the forms feel complete, perfectly satisfied, although they are limited. Even their limitations make them feel so complete. Marvel there, there's so much marvel, but in an utter littleness abounds, in small, small details. Rapture, intense delight, intricate rapture, rioting in a small space. Sometimes we see jewelry that is like that, no? So finely, beautifully made, such details in a small space, something absolutely perfect, filigree, silver or gold. Each rhythm is perfectly in tune with its environment. Each line is perfect and inevitable, just right. Each object faultlessly built for charm and use. Its function, it performs its function perfectly, and it's also charming and delightful to the senses.
Sorry, but you forget two lines before.
Oh, yes, tell me.
You know, on those absolute image mark the word and down the shield spiritual ecstasy. You forget.
I forgot this, yes.
Two lines.
These two lines, yes. So he's telling us that the absolute perfection is not there. The perfect word of creation incarnate in form is not there. The sheer, utter spiritual ecstasy is not there. But still, everything there is a miracle of symmetric charm. Thank you for reminding me. Sarojini?
All is on its own life. It just believes of its perfection soul. In a heaven's place, self-love, immunity, content to be. It has need of nothing more.
There, everything is in love with its own delight. It feels immune and intact, sure that it's perfect. It's because it's perfect, it's immune. And everything there is in this state of heaven-pleased, self-glad immunity. Just everything is perfect as it is. Everything is content to be as it is, and it doesn't feel any need for anything more. So different from our world, where we're always feeling the need of something more and something else. So Sri Aurobindo is going to tell us something very important about that. Kamala, you'll read.
Here was not total effort, broken heart, exiled from the order, unrest, test, empty of opposition and of pain. It was a world that could not fear nor grieve.
Read the next two lines, please.
It had no grace of error or defeat. It had no room for fault, no power to fail.
Isn't this interesting, what he says? In that whole world, what we experience, this futile effort. The other day I worked so hard for hours to do something which turned out to be just useless after an hour. So, futile efforts, and then you feel so disappointed and sad. That world is exempt. There's none of the ordeals and tests that we have to pass through here. There's no opposition, no pain. It's a world that could not fear nor grieve. It doesn't know anything about fear or grief because everything's just perfect there. And then he says, it had no grace of error or defeat. Sri Aurobindo is implying that the fact that we can make mistakes and that we can feel defeated and fail, this is a grace. It reminds us to aspire higher. No? There's no room for fault. There's no power to fail. They just can't fail. Even if they try, they can't do it. Very, very interesting few lines there.
Very strong.
Yeah. Mihong.
Out of some packed self-bliss, it grew at once its form discoveries of the mute idea and the miracle of its rhythmic thoughts and acts. Its clear technique of form and rounded lies. It's gracious keeper of inanimate shapes and glory of breathing bodies like our own.
Yes. So it's as if there's some packed self-bliss, not self-satisfaction, but self-bliss. It can just immediately draw on that. It's form discoveries of the mute, the silent idea, the creative idea. All that comes out spontaneously. The miracle of all those rhythmic thoughts and actions. This clear technique of firm and rounded lives, everything just perfect. It's gracious people of inanimate shapes, things like tables and chairs and vases, inanimate shapes, but they are like beings, beautiful, graceful, charming beings. And its glory of breathing, living bodies like our own. All that is just coming as if spontaneously. So how does King Ashwapati respond to all this? You like?
I have one question.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But when Shraddhavan from discovery of the new idea and the miracle of its speaking thoughts and mark, its clear technique of firm and roundly, sometimes is totally spontaneous and marvelous. Sometimes it's totally...
Well, more often than not for us, we have to make this effort and pass through the ordeal, and it's not spontaneous at all. No? That's why he's contrasting our difficulties with this spontaneous perfection of that subtle world.
But in some part of the book, Aurobindo tells you have no fault.
Yes.
And everything not fail. It's very also interesting.
Yes.
The development.
Yes. Did you say Rinaldo?
Yeah.
Yes, Rinaldo. Yeah.
Amazed, his senses lavished with delight. He moved in the divine, yet kind of work, and marvelous thoughts so near to ours, yet perfect like the playthings of the God. Deathless in the aspect of mortality.
Yes. So Ashwapati is just amazed and delighted by these experiences. His senses are just ravished with delight, carried away with delight in that beautiful world. He's moving there in that divine world, and yet it's like ours, kindred. It means closely related. He's admiring all these marvelous forms. They're so near to the forms that we experience in our world, and yet at the same time they're just perfect, like toys for gods. And the forms there are deathless. There isn't any death in that world, but they are wearing the forms of our world of mortality. Penny.
In their narrow and exclusive absolutes, the finite's ranked supremacies throned abide. It dreams not ever of what may have been. Only in boundaries can this absolute live.
Yes. So these forms are finite, they are limited. So their absolute perfection is narrow and exclusive. They are living there in a hierarchy. They are ranked supremacies. Each has his throne, his place. That world never dreams of what might have been. Sri Aurobindo has written an essay about the power of might have been. The things we have failed, we don't manage to achieve. Somehow it's creating a power of possibility for the future. But this world doesn't have that capacity. It never dreams of what might have been. And it can only live within its own boundaries of perfection. Martin.
In a supremeness bound to its own plan, where all was finished and no width were left, no space for shadows of the immeasurable, no room for the incalculable surprise, a captive of its own beauty and ecstasy, in a magic circle brought the enchanted mind.
So he's saying this is beautiful, but it's a very limited world. No? That's supreme in its own way, but it's bound to its own plan. There are no other possibilities. Everything is already finished. There's no space left for anything else. No space for shadows, hints, mysterious hints of what can't be measured. No room for the surprise of the incalculable, the unexpected. That world, or the nature of that world, is a captive of its own beauty and ecstasy. And it works in this enchanted circle. It can't go beyond. Kavita.
The spirit stood back, effaced behind its frame, admired for the bright finality of its lines. A blue horizon limited the soul. Though thought moved in luminous facilities, the outer ideas swallows its
shallows.
The outer ideals shallows its swim range. Life in its boundaries lingered satisfied with the small happiness of the body's acts.
Yes. So the spirit is behind, stood back, effaced. We can't see it behind this beautiful frame of forms. There's a horizon, a blue horizon is limiting the soul, as if saying it can't go any further, but that blue horizon is just perfectly beautiful. Thought, so the soul is limited. Thought moved in luminous facilities. Facilities like superficiality, superficial thoughts, very easy thoughts. It can swim, but not in very deep water. The shallows, the shallow waters of the outer ideal, the outer appearance and form, are the limits of its range. So in this situation, the power of life lingers satisfied in these boundaries. It lingers satisfied with the small happiness of the body's acts. I feel like reading to the end. Assigned as force to a bound corner mind, attached to the safe paucity of her room, she, life, did her little works and played and slept and thought not of a greater work undone. Forgetful of her violent, vast desires, forgetful of the heights to which she rose, her walk was fixed within a radiant groove. The beautiful body of a soul at ease, like one who laughs in sweet and sunlit groves. Childlike she swung in her gold cradle of joy. The space's call reached not her charmed abode. She had no wings for wide and dangerous flight. She faced no peril of sky or of abyss. She knew no vistas and no mighty dreams, no yearning for her lost infinitudes. A perfect picture in a perfect frame. This fairy artistry could not keep his will. Only a moment's fine release it gave. A careless hour was spent in a slight bliss. Our spirit tires of being surfaces. Transcended is the splendor of the form. It turns to hidden powers and deeper states. So now he looked beyond for greater light. His soul's peak climb, abandoning in its rear this brilliant courtyard of the House of Days, he left that fine material paradise. His destiny lay beyond, in larger space. He's just beginning his great exploration of all the worlds, all the planes of existence. So we'll have another look at those lines next week.
A nature lifted by a larger breath, plastic and passive to the all-shaping fire, answers the flaming Godhead's casual touch. Immune from our inertia of response, it hears the word to which our hearts are deaf, adopts the seeing of immortal eyes, and, traveller on the roads of line and hue, pursues the spirit of beauty to its home. Thus we draw near to the all-wonderful, following his rapture in things as sign and guide. Beauty is his footprint, showing us where he has passed. Love is his heartbeat's rhythm in mortal breasts. Happiness, the smile on his adorable face. A communion of spiritual entities, a genius of creative immanence, makes all creation deeply intimate. A fourth dimension of aesthetic sense, where all is in ourselves, ourselves in all. To the cosmic wideness realigns our souls. A kindling rapture joins the seer and seen. The craftsman and the craft, grown inly one, achieve perfection by the magic throb and passion of their close identity. All that we slowly piece from gathered parts, or by long labor stumblingly evolve, is there self-born by its eternal right. In us, too, the intuitive fire can burn, an agent light. It is coiled in our folded hearts. On the celestial levels is its home. Descending, it can bring those heavens here. But rarely burns the flame, nor burns for long. The joy it calls from those diviner heights brings brief, magnificent reminiscences and high, splendid glimpses of interpreting thought, but not the utter vision and delight. A veil is kept, something is still held back, lest captives of the beauty and the joy our souls forget to the highest to aspire. In that fair, subtle realm behind our own, the form is all, and physical gods are kings. The inspiring light plays in fine boundaries. A faultless beauty comes by nature's grace. There, liberty is perfection's guarantee. Although the absolute image lacks the word incarnate, the sheer spiritual ecstasy, all is a miracle of symmetric charm, a fantasy of perfect line and rule. There all feel satisfied in themselves and whole. A rich completeness is by limit made. Marvel in an utter littleness abounds. An intricate rapture riots in a small space. Each rhythm is kin to its environment. Each line is perfect and inevitable. Each object faultlessly built for charm and use. All is enamored of its own delight. Intact it lives, of its perfection sure, in a heaven pleased, self-glad immunity. Content to be, it has need of nothing more. Here was not futile effort's broken heart, exempt from the ordeal and the test, empty of opposition and of pain. It was a world that could not fear nor grieve. It had no grace of error or defeat. It had no room for fault, no power to fail. Out of some packed self-bliss it drew at once its form discoveries of the mute idea and the miracle of its rhythmic thoughts and acts, its clear technique of firm and rounded lives, its gracious people of inanimate shapes and glory of breathing bodies like our own. Amazed, his senses ravished with delight, he moved in a divine yet kindred world, admiring marvelous forms so near to ours, yet perfect like the playthings of a god, deathless in the aspect of mortality. In their narrow and exclusive absolutes, the finites' ranked supremacies throned abide. It dreams not ever of what might have been. Only in boundaries can this absolute live. In a supremeness bound to its own plan, where all was finished and no widths were left, no space for shadows of the immeasurable, no room for the incalculable surprise, a captive of its own beauty and ecstasy, in a magic circle wrought the enchanted might. The spirit stood back, effaced behind its frame, admired for the bright finality of its lines. A blue horizon limited the soul. Thought moved in luminous facilities. The outer ideal shallows its swim range. Life in its boundaries lingered, satisfied with the small happiness of the body's acts.